Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Dawson County Board of Commissioners voting session. Today is Thursday, July the 7th, 2022. Welcome those of you that are with us here in person, as well as those who are trying to get it on us online. I will make an announcement that we're having a little trouble with YouTube at the moment, but you can see it on Zoom. So we have posted a link for that. So would encourage those that are trying on YouTube to go to Zoom. All right, we'll start out with a roll call. And as you can see, we're all here. We move on to the opening presentation. Tonight, our opening presentation is a proclamation recognizing Big Canoe's 50th anniversary. And I'll read that proclamation. It says, Dawson County Board of Commissioners, in recognition of Big Canoe's 50th anniversary proclamation. Whereas 2022 marks the 50th anniversary of Big Canoe, a thriving mountain community of homes and people nestled across Dawson and Pickens counties. Whereas an area that was called the Enchanted Land by Native Americans many years ago would later become known as the Wolf Scratch property. And whereas this unique property was purchased by Cousins Properties in Atlanta, that through a joint effort with the finance firm of Sea Pine Company of Hilton Head, South Carolina, began development of Big Canoe in 1972. And whereas the estimated $200 million resort and second home retreat project encompassed a 9,130 acre tract that would ultimately include a golf course, beautiful lakes, and other second to none amenities. And whereas over the years, Big Canoe has grown and prospered, touting best in class attractions and landmarks like Wolf Scratch School, Big Canoe Chapel, the Bell and Bell Tower, and the Mediation Park. And whereas Big Canoe's milestone anniversary this year celebrates the cultural history and commitment to the Big Canoe community, its residents, and the surrounding areas. And whereas Dawson County proudly celebrates Big Canoe's storied 50-year history and the community's many contributions to Dawson County. Now, therefore, the Dawson County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaims July 2022 as Big Canoe Month in Dawson County. What's the pleasure of the board in reference to this proclamation?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Fawcett,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Gaines. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And this proclamation is approved 4-0. If you would hand that to Commissioner Fawcett, she'll be delivering that.
Thank you.
All right, so I'd ask everyone to please stand for a brief invocation and pledge. If you would bow your heads, please. Our dear gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for the many blessings of life. We thank you for this county. We thank you for its citizens. Lord, we ask that you give us knowledge and wisdom to carry out the business that's associated with Dawson County government. Anything that we accomplish will give you the honor and glory. In Christ's name, we do ask and pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Are there any announcements? Any announcements? We'll move on to the approval of the minutes. First up, we have the minutes of the work session held on June 16th, 2022. Any additions or deletions? Motions.
Motion approved.
Motion by Commissioner Satterfield,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Dooley. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And those are approved 4-0. Next, we have the minutes of the voting session held on June 16th, 2022. Any additions or deletions? Motions.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Fawcett, seconded by Commissioner Gaines. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And those are approved 4-0. Next, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. I do have 3 changes to the agenda for you to consider. First will be in new business. Number 6 will be artificial turf fields for Park and Rec. You heard that earlier today. Number 7 will be request to increase pay per call for volunteer firefighters. Chief Thompson brought that to you earlier. And then review and update the zoning ordinance and review and update to the impact fee study. Commissioner Gaines brought that as well as council as we look at a short-term emergency moratorium. So those are the three additions to the agenda. And with those three additions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve the agenda as presented with the three changes.
A motion by Commissioner Gaines,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Fawcett. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And that is approved 4-0. No one signed up for public comment in this section,
No, sir.
and we'll move on to zoning. This is zoning that was tabled from June 16th voting session, at which time we had a public hearing. The board had some questions of the applicant, and the applicant is here to answer some of those questions. And this is ZA 2209 Continental 673 Fund LLC request to rezone tax map parcel 114-020 from commercial highway business to RMF residential multifamily for the purposes of developing 113 units of multifamily residence. This is at Dawson Village Way and Beartooth Parkway, and as I said, was tabled from June 16th, at which time we already had a public hearing. So we will not be having another public hearing. This is just to hear the answers to the questions that the board presented to the applicant. So if the applicant will come forward, I think they've got a presentation that they're going to give you in reference to answers to those questions. And you'll have opportunity for any other questions that you may have. And then you may decide what you desire to do at that time.
Turn that, there's an on button on that thing, so people hear it. There you go.
Better?
There you go.
Hi, my name's Gwen Wheeler with Continental Properties. I was not able to be here last week, but I was watching. So I'm very familiar with the discussion that occurred. For the record, our address is W134N8675 Executive Parkway, Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, 53051. A lot of the discussion previously revolved around parking and traffic. So I basically have the full presentation. I will not waste my time repeating myself, but I wanted to leave some of it in case questions went back to some of the things that we discussed before about who we are and what we do. But mainly I wanted to talk about the changes that we made to the site plan to address the topics that came up previously. So we did add additional parking. There was a lot of concern about guest parking. So we did increase the total parking ratio from about 2 spaces per home to 2.15. In order to address that, we added some, hopefully you guys can see this a little bit closer. We added some additional off-street parking near where the compactor was, and I'll get to that in a second. We also added some additional off-street parking by the new compactor location, as well as a couple scattered throughout the site, in order to address, making sure that there is no on-street parking, especially for the overflow and guest parking. I did also engage a traffic consultant, which we wanted to talk about and understand the generation of vehicles, the vehicles per home to be expected in this type of development. I believe you all have a copy of this. I realize it looks much thicker than it is. It is 38 pages. Most of it is exhibits. All the meat of the information is in the first 2-page memo. I just wanted you to have the backup if you really felt like reading it. But the bulk, one of the main points I wanted to bring up was the expected vehicular generation as far as number of vehicles per home for this type of development would be about 1.5 per home. So just to equate that to the parking, we're providing a significant higher number of spaces than the parking actual vehicles expected to be on site for the residents. So lots of guest parking. The other thing, back to the compactor location, I know that the neighbor from the manor came out and had concerns about the dumpster location. We were aware of that before last meeting. We've been communicating with them and coordinating with them. So we were already expecting that comment. We have since moved it over to the exit onto Beartooth Parkway that is nearest 53. I think that works much better for everybody. Less of a distance for the trash service provider to have to come into the site. It also is a nice convenient location for residents as they're maybe leaving the site to drop their trash, and then it allows for a lot more screening for us as well as any neighbors. So that was not an issue, and it even worked out well because we were able to add some additional parking in that location too. Same number of homes as before. The exit and entrance locations have not changed. So back to the traffic discussion, we, as part of the memo I shared with you, it also talks about the trip distribution, meaning where the drivers are, how many trips per day are going to be generated and where they're going. What direction are they going when they're coming and leaving the site? So specifically on the third page, it actually shows you the breakdown. I know the main discussion was around that driveway number 3, which is the same one that the compactor is now located at. I think was the main concern. We were talking about whether there would be a warrant for some sort of turn lane. Our traffic consultant, based, and this is not his opinion, this is based on the National Institute of Traffic Engineers data, that it is not warranted for the number of trips. And just to highlight that intersection, and we can talk about the others if you'd like, but that one, driveway number 3, the first number, the enter 2, would be the AM peak, how many trips of people, leaving the site, and then how many people entering the site at the peak time, AM and PM, and then the 58 in the brackets is the total volume. So only 58 vehicles coming and going in one day. It's really not a lot. That is between that one and driveway number 4 are both the least utilized access points. We suspected that most likely everyone was going to lean towards driveway number 2, which is where the signal is, and the traffic consultant did confirm that he agrees with that. That's where the bulk of the traffic is going to be. So again, that solidifies our opinion, justifies our opinion that no improvements to Beartooth are necessary at driveway 3 or 4, that there's not a turn lane required, especially considering the low speed of that road. We did talk a little bit at the time 3 weeks ago about right-of-way reservations and sidewalks. We are not opposed to working with you to do a dedication of right-of-way for future improvements. As I understand it, there are no imminent plans. There's no even preliminary plans for an improvement, a widening to Beartooth Parkway. So it's hard to, get into the details of what that's going to be, but we're absolutely open to a right-of-way dedication for those future requirements. We are fully comfortable with paying a fee in lieu for a sidewalk along Beartooth, if that's, if the commission desires that. We felt that it didn't really make sense to commit to building that when it may just get ripped out in a few years for the widening of Beartooth Parkway. So again, we are happy, fully supportive of that being a condition, that we will work with Public Works or engineering on what the scope of that might be and what contribution we could make to that once we just kind of know what it is. And as long as we can keep our project as it is currently proposed as far as the density calculation. The maximum density of the MF of this district is 6. We may not end up maxing that out. This is a concept plan. We haven't engineered it yet. We could find out through, once we dig into the details of the grading and the drainage and all the other very challenging site work characteristics here, that we have to drop a few homes. We may. We just don't know that yet. We need to know first whether we have the support from the commission for this rezoning. So while I'm happy to share all the details on the number of homes and number of parking spaces and all of that, it's all kind of conceptual at this point. So with that, I know there was a lot of talk about number of spaces and depths of spaces. Was a suggestion that the driveway aprons leading to the garages be 25 feet minimum. There are many situations where we could probably meet 25 feet, but there are quite a few where it will be challenging due to the site characteristics and the topographic challenges. So we are still, I apologize. These are just highlighting some of the changes and the additional parking that we added just to point you to the right directions. Again, this is the scenario where there's the 2-car garage, where we could likely fit 1 large vehicle and 1 smaller vehicle, providing 4 spaces for these homes. There's not a lot of these. Again, this is a mix of 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom offerings. It's not cookie cutter. This is a 1 garage option. So this would be where you would have both of these, actually, is where we are committing to have 21 feet minimum from the garage door to the sidewalk, then a 5-foot sidewalk, then the road. And again, this is really driven by the site constraints. The other thing I wanted to point out, the code minimum parking space is 9 by 18. So 21 feet is still larger than like a commercial parking lot size. A large Suburban is, 18, 19 feet long. A Honda Accord is 16 feet long. So a full-size sedan can easily fit in that space. In the event that someone maybe has a very large vehicle, we do have offerings for them. These are our 2-bedroom homes without a garage, and these have a 44-foot long driveway. You could either fit, 1 very large vehicle and a Fiat, and that, or a couple of full-size sedans in there. That's 2 tandem spaces. And these are shared, so it's actually 4 spaces between the 2 homes. So a lot of our parking spaces are meeting this 25-foot, spacing. It's hard to make it a blanket criteria for when you have multiple parking options, garage options, and home options.
But you're saying a minimum of 21.
Yes, we can absolutely commit to it being a minimum of 21. It doesn't mean they're all going to be 21.
No.
And we do suspect, and we did look at that, and we do have a very strong indication that only half of our garages would need to be as short as 21 feet. But, it just gets very nuanced. So how do you kind of lock that in as a condition? But I'm definitely open to that conversation. And I believe that was all of the concerns that were raised. I know that there's been a lot of discussion about just the general use of the property and the desire for this to be commercial. We did look at, there was a little bit of discussion about this kind of outlot remaining a commercial outlot. We are not opposed to that at all. To make this a little bit more of a mixed use, the current property owner is here. If you would like to talk to him about the history of this property. You know, I've only been aware of this since the beginning of this year, so I'm not going to begin to speak to what has been done. I know he has some desire to potentially have a commercial outlet, but as far as the zoning request and the density and all of that, we are including it all in our application. So with that, I can turn it over to him if you would like to, if you have any questions. Or I'm happy to answer any questions on the
Let's start out by
details of the
asking,
site
let's
plan.
start out with you.
Yep.
The board have any questions of the app? I have a couple of, so 21-foot minimum on from the garage to the,
two sidewalk.
and that would be about 50%, half the homes.
Mhm.
The others have somewhere in the neighborhood up to 44 feet. Okay, there
Or would
were,
have their own
yeah, where they pull
parking
in.
areas.
It's not a garage.
Yeah,
They
there's
don't have
just a lot
garage.
of different parking
Yeah.
options.
So there were 10 stipulations that I'm sure you've seen that were brought up by planning. And of course, the one stipulation from the planning commission was the 25-foot separation. And then you're saying 21 feet there, or potentially 21 feet there. Are you good with the other 9 stipulations that were brought forward? Traffic impact study shall be provided to the submittal of any land development disturbance. Owner development shall dedicate right of way along Beartooth Parkway and state routes. You mentioned that.
Mhm.
Community shall include a passive or active recreation use that is minimum of 5% of the acreage and shall be under construction prior to the issuance of the first certificate of occupancy.
I'm sure we've met that.
A replanted buffer of at least 15 feet in width shall be provided and maintained around the entire exterior perimeter of the development.
I'm sure we've met that.
Buffers in which vegetation is non-existent or is inadequate to meet the screening requirements of this article shall be planted with supplemental planting so as to provide a year-round effective visual screen.
No problem.
All landscape design shall incorporate a minimum of 40% evergreen plantings, trees, shrubs, and ground covers. All plant material must be Georgia native.
Yep.
Developer shall plant a minimum of 1 3-inch caliber native overstory tree in the front yard of each unit.
Mhm.
There shall be no vinyl siding.
Correct. We are
Developer
not
shall employ a
proposing vinyl.
third-party erosion control monitoring firm for the project. The
Yes.
firm shall be responsible for inspection, construction site, and implementation of stormwater and erosion control and provide weekly reports, active permits to the county. And so number 10 was the one that said 25-foot separation, and that's the one that you
Mhm.
had the most concern with.
Yeah.
All the rest of them, you're good.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant?
Did you say y'all planned on leaving the interior roads private or you're wanting to turn those over to public?
Everything would be private. There was a little bit of back and forth on Dawson Village Way of whether it is public or private. I understand it to be private.
Correct.
We
That's
are
the-
fine with that.
And that's when you'd be upgrading.
Yeah, and we will. We are fully expecting to improve Dawson Village Way as part of this development. We are fine with it remaining private. I think there was just a question of where does it stand today? And yeah. I feel like we've still, even at the last meeting, I feel like there was a little bit of difference of opinion. But everything on here, everything on site would be private, all utilities, storm, roads. So I know there's been, Chris is clearly an advocate for commercial and revenue. One thing that I did want to point out on that note is we estimate that we're going to pay $360,000 a year in property taxes here. Today, and the current owner can talk about that, but it was very nice to be able to catch up with him today because he says he pays $11,800 a year right now. So right there is a significant increase in revenue for the county. And it's, I understand that there's going to be some impact on emergency services and things because it's just more people, but it is going to be a fully private community. It's not going to be your typical single-family community with public roads that the county has to maintain.
So this is a rental
Correct. These will be
property.
for
So you will
rent.
have people there, a management team there all the
Correct.
time.
Correct.
And in reference to, let's say somebody decides to park in the street, which is prohibited, management team would notify the owner of whoever that was.
Absolutely.
And
And this
so,
isn't a
yeah.
large community. I'm sure that we're going to know every single resident by name.
Okay.
And this is Continental employees managing this community. We can put it in the lease that there's no street parking, and we can enforce it better than any other, HOA could.
Other questions of the applicant?
You're talking about Dawson Village Way remaining private, but y'all don't plan to gate it or anything, do
No,
you?
no, sir.
So it would still have the
No,
interparcel
we-
connectivity to the other
Absolutely.
restaurants.
We
and
know
businesses.
that it's a used cut through. But we like the access to that light as, as the traffic memo said, there's most likely that's where most of our residents are going to go. So we really like the interconnectivity and the access to the site.
Other questions?
You said no vinyl siding.
Correct.
What will they be constructed?
It will be fully fiber cement siding, like hardy plank siding. So very high quality, sustainable material.
Don't we have a minimum of rock brick fascia on the fronts of these things in our, maybe it's
That's
not,
in
maybe it's
commercial.
not
That's
multi-family.
commercial.
Yeah.
Well, we've done it in residential quite often as well,
Mhm.
but
We
And they'll all, the beauty of it is, having the variety of types is they're all gonna look different too, different colors, different, it's not gonna be cookie cutter, the same building over and over and over again. It's gonna look very much like a single family subdivision.
Other questions?
I suppose there are no basements. Are there basements?
Correct, no
Just some
basements.
slab.
No.
Other questions? Thank you. We may have some more later. Is there any desire of the board to hear the history of this property?
I'd like to hear a little, What about you, Chris?
I've met one before on some commercial stuff.
Oh, okay.
I'm okay with it. I mean.
Want to give us the history of this property, of how long you've had it and what you've been trying to do?
Good evening, commissioners. Good evening, Chairman. My name is JT Gangwall. I've met with a couple of you guys before in the past, and I appreciate all your support that you've showed me. I'm your neighbor. I'm a developer in Helen, Georgia. I have hotels there, and our most recent project was the Holiday Inn Express and Conference Center there in Helen, Georgia. When we purchased this property back in 2016, we had just opened that facility in Helen. And our desire was, and our plan was to open a similar facility here in Dawson County. During my search for support for that facility, I think we had changed, the county had changed planning and zoning directors multiple times, business development directors multiple times. So it was a lot of moving parts. And then finally, we did a feasibility study, and it just wasn't feasible at that time to develop that facility. Now it was a 30-acre parcel when I first bought the entire acreage. And so there was also a lot of discussion with some commissioners about doing a multi-use development. Now, in order to get the zoning change, there were some restrictions because our size of the parcel was not big enough. But we talked about possibly doing some commercial, some multifamily, and some retail. Now, the parcel that's remaining, and the one that Continental is the subject parcel right now, that is the most challenging area of the entire site. We sold 11 and a half acres to Manor Lake Development, which they built a senior living facility, and they just opened, I think, last year. So that's kind of our commercial portion of the site. This middle area is a very terraneous, very topographically challenged area with wetlands. So for here, I mean, we've been searching for a partner, someone to partner up with to do a commercial development. So far, we have not found one. But we have found is an interest in this, and we've done our research on Continental. They do manage their own facilities, so we believe they would be a good partner. A lot of them even though they're headquartered in Wisconsin, a lot of the people you're seeing here are based out of Atlanta. So their presence is in Atlanta. So we think they would be a good partner. We think they would bring a good development to Dawson County. And then there's a 1-acre parcel next to Waffle House on 53 that we think that would end up being a retail, bank or a small restaurant site. So that would kind of tie in that multi-use feel out of the 30 acres that we purchased in 2016.
Questions? Any questions for the owner?
Yeah, I don't think you can do the commercial side. If they're asking to rezone everything to residential, so that lot that you're talking about is one of my main concerns. It would just sit there. So,
The empty lot.
yeah.
This is
So-
part of the process, part of to get to the number that they got to. Okay, thank you, sir. for That information. Do have a couple of questions for Sharon. All right, so just make sure that I'm on the same page. RMF, which is what they're requesting, is allowable in CHB.
Correct.
Okay, and what does our code state on the front setback to the sidewalk? From the home to the road, or it may not even be the sidewalk, but to the
We
road,
have 20 feet
20 feet
for the
setback.
structure.
So basically, they're saying 21 feet to minimum from garage to sidewalk, 5 foot to sidewalk. So we'd
That's
actually-
to the front of the garage, not to the front of the building. It's
It's just the structure. whatever.
structure said 20 foot.
But some of these are, the throat depth of the driveway is maybe 21 feet, but the structure, because it's an H, sticks closer to the sidewalk, correct?
On the site
Just based
plan,
on pictures.
It's got to be at least 20 feet.
I'd have to double check that. It may be in the RMF site specific. In most townhome developments, it's 20
Okay.
feet, but with the RMF, it may be site specific with the concept plan.
Thank you, man. Any other questions for Sharon before she leaves? All right,
I guess, what it show on, I know you asked that, because on our comp plan. What does it show on our plan?
it's CHB, but RMF is allowable in CHB. And we have that all over the place because you've got, it's basically what I think the idea, the general idea of it was commercial in the front, feathering out to residential in the back. And that's basically what you have here, because this is surrounded by commercial. If you look at the map, it's surrounded by, which meets in that future land use plan. All right, so any other questions? What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to deny the request.
Motion to deny. Do I have a second? Second. Motion by Commissioner Dooley. Seconded by Commissioner Gaines. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. That's denied 3-1. All right. We'll move on to unfinished business. First, we have consideration of request for title and grade change for planning and development administrative assistance. This was tabled from the June 16th, 2022 voting session. And these are, all three of these unfinished ones are from planning and development. So we can take all these together if you so desire. The second one was consideration of request for title and grade change for planning and development business license technician, also tabled on June 16th, and consideration request for title and grade change for planning and development zoning specialist tabled from June 16. Ms. Sharon provided these the updates to you in reference to that. I know we had her to go back and look at some information. Sharon, if you want to come up and kind of talk a little bit to this as well. I know we've had some discussion in reference to the changes, and I know you said in your, that you had this money in your budget to cover these potential changes that you're requesting
Yes,
for the remainder of this year. And obviously, that would be a change that would have to be added into next year
correct.
in reference to the budget process. Anything you want to add before I ask the board for questions?
Just spent a lot of time and energy on redrafting the job descriptions, worked with HR for a couple. I don't know how long we worked together to gain her confidence and approval. And tried to get it to you folks as quick as I could, trying to build the team and set the path for our future. And I need to get the right titles and the right job descriptions in place to do that,
And associated with the right pay.
that too.
Yeah. Well, and I commend you for that, for taking the time and the effort to do that and to look at your staff. I know the board has some concern about other departments doing the same thing, which I can understand. And I think that that it would be important for the board to take the board doesn't know is the thing about what your people do every day. You do. And the county manager does. And I think it would be important in these situations to where the board is not actually making this decision. But that the county manager is making this decision because he has more knowledge of what these people do on a day-to-day basis than the board does. And I think as we migrate forward, that it's going to be important for this board to look at establishing a dollar amount that they approve that is percentaged out in whatever fashion we come up with at that particular time, to where we're not determining which employee is a good employee and which one is maybe not meeting the mustard, because we don't know. And that would go to the county manager or to that elected official based on what their percentage of that total winds up being. That's where we need to get to, in my opinion, and take this off of the board and let that be a day-to-day operational issue ran by the day-to-day people that run the operation. And that what we should be doing is establishing whatever that amount of money is that we're going to put into the budget, that lump sum dollar amount, and then coming up with a percentage allocation, whether that's based on the number of employees that that department has, and they get that percentage of the overall amount, which I think would be the fairest and most equitable way of doing it, and then putting that on the people that are in the know. I think that's where we need to go with that. And that's something other that maybe we can even talk about in this upcoming budget as well, so that we're not in the position of trying to determine the value of what an employee is, because only the department head knows that, only the elected official knows that, what that value is to that employee, along with David's expertise of being part of that as well in reference to the people that work under him. I'm not talking about him dealing with the elected officials. I'm talking about him dealing with just his people. And the elected officials would get their percentage, and they would have to deal with their own people. And they would have to make sure they provided the documentation that HR needed on time with those pay sheets and the justifications associated with that that's been asked for. I think that's where we need to go in the future. Now, what y'all want to do with this currently, that's open for discussion. So that's the question. What do you want to do?
Well, I'll echo what the chairman said, is the information you provided one-on-one to me and to the board. I think you've done a great job of trying to define or look at things differently, just not doing things the way they've always been done, and probably laid a good foundation for a potential model that we need to expound upon through the whole organization. Now, that doesn't probably tell you what you want to know today and get you what you want from my perspective with your exact request, but I think you've provided the foundation. The reality is we as a board have to look everybody. We can't just look at individual departments. And so I think it's our role to Chairman Thurman's point is we hire the right people, Dave, and as a county manager. And then y'all manage, and then your department heads know the day-to-day operations. And I can't say how good a job XYZ does because I don't see them on a daily basis. So it's hard for me, as Billy pointed out, to make those decisions. I would rather empower our employees and our department heads to manage that. So all that to say, I think you built a good thing, a foundation to start on, and I think Dave can take that and expound upon that and maybe build upon that with other department heads and come up with a process. So it would be me not particularly moving forward on this tonight, because I think that's irresponsible to try to handle them à la carte. I would make a recommendation that we instead transition to take the work that you've done, the model that you've done, and allow management to kind of build upon that with all department heads.
And so with that, you're saying you would be willing to look in the budget at setting that number? And-
Well, to me, I think we, through conversations is let's come up with the framework first. I don't know. I mean, I think
That's part of the
the
framework.
theory is, yes, I think that we apply a dollar amount through the budget process to allow management to apply that how they see fit with validation by those decisions. But I think we first would allow them to set up the program to begin with, and then kind of get feedback from us as a board individually. That makes sense.
Yeah, and
Take
she's
what you
got
want.
and like I said, she's done all of the legwork. I mean,
Yeah.
if you could if each department would duplicate what she's done in reference to her employees, I think she has a model that they can use. So I don't think it's going to be overcomplicated to come up with that. But, I just want you to be thinking as we move into the budget process, how we move that forward away from the board and into the management area that it should be.
Mhm.
And put that where it should be, whether that's the elected official or whether that's the county manager who manages multiple department heads and multiple departments.
That's a great, what you and Chris talked about, but we as a board got to be willing to trust our management. I mean, we've had pay studies. I know everybody's worried about the economy, but our employees are also worried about the economy. They're dealing with it every day, just like we are. If we set them out, we got to trust the input we get back from our department heads and our county manager and trust that decision or input they give us. And because in the past, we give raises and we went by the pay studies, but we didn't implement the whole pay study. We gave raises, but like I said at the end of the year last year, we got young men sitting right there and back there. We gave a raise, and it's gonna be 18 months before they get another one. Because we gave them a raise in March of last year. And then we gave the other cost of living, but we've got some, and now I think they're short about 6 or 8 people. Sheriff's Department short again. We got other departments, we still can't fill the road department, Public Works. We've heard it and heard it and heard it and heard it. It's about time for us to step up and do something about it. Like I said, we keep saying they were our biggest asset, well, then let's prove it to them. Let's go by what they tell us. If we're gonna trust them, then let's do it. That's all I've got to say on it.
Yeah, and I don't have a real issue with what she's asking for because she's not asking for any money.
Mhm.
She has it in her budget now. It will have to be added into next year. You do need to understand that. But as far as me individually, I think she's made a really good presentation. But I think to Chris's point, we want to have a standardization
Yeah.
Mhm.
process by which we work with here.
Mhm.
You don't want every meeting for there to be a different department head or a
right.
different elected official coming for the board and asking for money. We need a process.
Mhm.
And I think we're working toward that process. And we started that in this year's budget with your approval of giving him that $100,000. That helped. And that's a start. And I think we've got to broaden what we do to make that work like it should work. I mean, by establishing a dollar amount, whatever that is, whatever we can afford, if that's $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, whatever that is, that we would be putting forward in reference to salary increases. Because everybody here knows that the work level or the work output of every employee is not the same.
Mhm.
It's not the same. And you don't know that, and I don't know that. Department heads and elected officials know that because they work with them every day. So and that goes to the trust you're talking about. I want to get to the point where we're trusting those people. And all we're doing is establishing a dollar amount, which is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to have a dollar amount instead of trying to be involved in every aspect. We've made some great changes over the years of giving him more power and doing the things that he should be doing as a manager. We want to continue to do that. And I know he's reviewed this request that she's made today, and I would think, not speaking for you, David, but you would agree that she's justified that in your mind. And so, I mean, I have no problem moving forward with this request, if that's what the board wants to do. But we've got to work forward. And we've got to do that in this coming budget, in my opinion, to establish a standard, to avoid it having to be a parade of people coming in and out. So I think that's where we got to go.
And that's kind of my thought on this. I think if we had that process established, I agree with what Chris is saying. It doesn't need to be, just an arbitrary deal. But if we had the process established, I think this would still get approved through that process. So that's why I'm kind of okay with going ahead and doing this as we work towards establishing that. And, when we did the $100,000, I was good with that. But if we're going to up it to, to 500,000 or 600,000, we may want to try to look at doing a, just where it's not a first come, first served deal, where we have some like deadlines put in there to where, the 1st of August, the department heads have submitted this to Dave, and then he can go through and pick that. And because I wouldn't want a good employee that needed a raise not to get it just because all the money was already gone on something else. And I think that's something we could look at too.
Well, that's the reason I go back to percentaging it out. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be a first come, first serve. In other words, you got all these departments in the county, both elected and non-elected.
Mhm.
And so whatever that dollar amount was, whatever we can afford could be percentaged out. Coming up with a methodology for that, whether that's, this department has 30 employees, and that's, we've got, let's say we have 300, let's just say 35. This department has 35 employees and we have 350 total employees. We have more than that, I know, but I'm just using that as a number. So, that would be 10%.
Right.
So if you're giving out $500,000, then, that would be based out on the percentage.
Mhm.
Because they have 10% of the overall county staff. Or if you have 50 employees or whatever,
Prorating.
Yeah.
basically.
And I think that would be good. Just something to where it makes sure everybody's has an equal chance.
And what
At
you're
it.
doing, in that, in my opinion, is we talked some about, merit increases and all that stuff. And you would hope that, in this process, then you would have the department head or the elected official who should know.
Mhm.
And then it puts an onus on that person to do their job, to manage.
Mhm.
To actually do their job and manage their department in conjunction with the guidance given to them by the county manager, or even an elected official. Elected officials still should manage.
Mhm.
That's their job. They got elected to manage a department, so they should be managing the people and the department that they got elected to do. And so, you know, would you have some that would probably just split it evenly? Fine. If that's how they manage, then, you know, but I would hope that the people that David has control over, he would have more of a, where he would say, no, we're not going to do that. There's got to be a system,
Mhm.
you know, and because you want to reward your really good employees,
Yeah.
because what we've been doing in the past is not doing that.
That's
Mhm.
It
right.
does not do any good to give everybody the same thing. That does not encourage good quality work. All that does is encourage for people that have been doing a really good job to backtrack down to where everybody else is, because I'm getting the same thing they get anyway.
That's right.
And so that's what we got to get away from. We got to be a lot more proactive in making sure that, and those are the people you don't want to lose.
Mhm.
Those people that are out here, and we got a lot of those. And we got some, I'm sure, when I ran the fire department, I had some that were just as content as the day was long to do the minimum amount.
Mhm.
Well, they would get the minimum pay in this system. If that, you know, so there's a lot of things you can look at, a lot of factors you can look at in it right there. I mean, you know, they could take a percentage of that as a cost of living increase if they wanted to do that for everybody. And then they could take a percentage of that, the remainder of that, and reward good quality work, which is what we want to be able to do to be able to retain good quality employees. And I think we'll start to see, if we make that kind of an effort, we'll start to see people who have been through the grind and they've stayed around, they'll continue to stay.
Mhm.
They won't leave and go down the road. I think they'll stay with us and they'll say, now they've got a real plan.
Yeah.
They're actually looking at quality and they're working on quality and trying to make it happen. But, you know, I know that's a lot of talk to talk about the things that we're talking
Right,
about
yeah.
right here, but I think we have to understand where we are and where we need to get to be able to make it work. And I agree with, you know, Commissioner Satterfield. We have to trust the people we hired
Mhm.
to do the job. I mean, I spent 37 years as a department person, and a lot of that as a director. From 1987 all the way to when I retired in 2015, I managed a department. And so, you know, I understand how a department head and the concerns they have and the desire to keep quality staff, because I had to look at a lot of employees in my multiple years of being in charge and say, you know, I can't get any more money. I can't do anything. You know, everybody gets 2%,
Mhm.
you know, so we got to make that change. And in reference to what he's talking about, in reference to the fire department, sheriff's office, public works, and their inability to maintain a complete staff, I think this will help.
Mhm.
I think this will help. I think it'll give us the opportunity to get those people to stay around and not go down the road somewhere else, because their boss recognizes that they're a quality employee and that they want them to stay. All right, well,
We just can't wait over a year to do it, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
We need to look at this
And
budget
we,
in reference to that piece. We can look at this piece right now as far as that goes. We should look at the overall, we should look at some concept in this year's budget, and Ms. Sharon has put out a pretty decent methodology that we can build on.
Well, I think-
David can build on that.
I think, you know, we had the same concern that Tim has right now 12 months ago, and that's when we did the increase for the front line, the fire and EMS, and then we later
March,
caught up the rest of
been
it.
over a year.
So I think we can accomplish the same thing, but instead of just carte blanche, I think that's the word, divvying it out equally. To Billy's point, you allow those department heads, we need to be expeditious in getting the program in place is what
Mhm.
Tim's saying. And I agree, you know, we don't need to wait. Instead of us just saying, all right, let's give everybody $1 raise. Let's figure out what that amount, that bucket amount is, and then empower our department heads to make those decisions on how to allocate that out. I don't think we're saying, I know you're saying in the budget process, but you're saying, let's do it now.
it's-
And I think we got to blend the two together. I think we got to
You
do
wait to
both.
January, you're gonna be 18
Right.
months.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And we
Yeah.
preach about what a good job
That's
and our department heads and county manager done a pretty good job. We just put $3.2 million back in the budget from last year's money. And we talked, I mean, Vicky sent out a report. This is the best this county's been in since 2004. And so one reason we're the best and one reason we put $3.2 million back in the budget is because these people sitting out here.
Yeah, and I'm
But
fine
we-
with that, not waiting till the end of the year,
Yeah.
but we just get the process put together.
But we also don't get those numbers until, I think, from my perspective, health insurance is a major benefit to
Did great
county
on this year,
employees.
though.
And so
Commend the staff.
we
They
didn't
did-
know that back in March. And so
Yeah.
now we do. Now we know what fund balance. And now we can make informed factual decisions based on what our fund balance looks like.
And we can
to do
look at
something
that,
mid-year.
You know, that's what I said, we can look at our fund balance, because we talked about that. We talked about looking at it again, somewhere down throughout the year, and we can do that before the end of the year.
Sure.
But going forward, obviously, it'll be a budget process item that we would have to do to come up with a flat dollar amount that we were gonna put in the budget for that to work. But we can do something now, if that's what the desire of the board is, and then we can turn around and put a flat dollar amount in the budget for the coming year, if that's what you want to do as well. So we can take a look at all those numbers, but, all right, so with all that being said, what do y'all want to do about these three things here? I need
Well,
a
I mean, will that,
motion.
yeah, is there anybody out there? Oh, but if hers is approved, then what does that do? You know, we want to be consistent and give everybody the same opportunity. So, you know, we set precedents when we do that. So what's gonna happen in the other departments then? What?
So can I make a
Go ahead.
comment? Since Sharon and I talked and everything, we have also talked and I've gotten with HR to begin use the same process that she is to get to all the department heads so that we can have that and hopefully have that ready for you during the hearings.
Okay.
So we are copying that format and trying to move forward and getting equity across the board.
So if I may give a hypothetical motion. Hypothetically, I would make a motion to deny the requests that are before us and allow staff to take the methodology, I guess, that's been used, build upon that to apply countywide. And then bring that, I would say this, once you have that framework of the methodology, we as a board, maybe in the next meeting, need to decide what we're comfortable with this year, within this term, from a getting through the rest of the year increase for employees, and then apply the methodology to the budget for next year as well, moving forward. But that would accomplish addressing the shortfalls that you have today and other department heads have today, allowing staff to do a uniform manner for us to apply it. And then it's our job is to come up with a dollar amount of how big a bucket can we get. So I would say that, and then I would make that, David, I don't know how much time you would need to come up and solidify that process. I mean, is 29 days enough? So August 5th, and then she's already done all your work. All you gotta do.
But there, I mean, there are others gonna come now, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
See, I mean, I can just,
But these are
But-
job descriptions. These are not. These are two vacancies.
You know, just try to hire somebody.
oh,
I
okay.
got to hire somebody.
Oh, okay.
You can't hire at particularly and into the job description, 'cause it doesn't match what that person is. That was the pressing matter. and
So,
that's
so
why I
which
did-
two are open? Because you have some that you were changing.
The office manager is open and the development specialist too, which is the occupational license person, which we do 135 business licenses a month. and we need to recognize the responsibility of that job.
Yeah, but they're already in place. You're not hiring somebody for that, right?
No, I have to hire
Those are
somebody.
vacant.
Those are both.
The person that was doing it is trying to retire.
Yeah, that's.
So we have
Margaret.
to, we as a board have to approve job description changes.
I
Yes,
was told,
that's
yes.
Title changes.
That's correct. Great change in job.
We have to do that. You can't do that.
Yes, ma'am.
Unless we grant him.
I'm saying, When you say 29 days, we
No.
talk about the entire county employees.
We could.
County attorney
Yeah,
next
that's-
You can't do
I'm gonna
that.
let her.
Well, I was sitting quietly and thought I'd send an email tomorrow, but since I think Sharon sort of brought it home, I think we're sort of conflating two issues.
Yeah.
We're talking about really what I view as merit increases. And this concept of apportioning a pot of money, giving it to your department director to spread across the department. I think that's a great idea. A lot of governments do that, and then they decide who to reward and how they pass out merit. But I'm not familiar or accustomed to seeing individual department heads create jobs, make up job descriptions, and then set the pay grade. And so
Yeah.
the salary study, for instance, that we just did was totally based upon a classification plan and a system of job positions, job titles, and job grades. And so if we start allowing that to be adjusted independently by each department, that whole system falls apart really, as does our pay study. What Sharon is doing, although I'm hearing it for the first time, really, what I understand her to be doing is really reclassifying positions. And our employee handbook does talk through the procedures, and she's doing exactly right. Dave's indicated correctly, it comes to the board because that's part of your, if you see the big org chart of the county, that's messing with that. And so the policies are set up that does come to you because that's a significant aspect of this organizational structure. And so that is a board policy decision, I think appropriately. She's reclassifying because she sees that the person called administrative assistant is really not doing a typical administrative assistant function. Now, we've got administrative assistants probably all over this county that are graded at whatever number in 1 million departments, but she is viewing that administrative assistant as doing something different than administrative assistant and say the tax department or the planning department, well, you are the planning department, or in, the finance department or whatever. And so, but you would have administrative assistants in various departments with the same job description and the same salary grade and range. And so this is reclassifying based upon the realities of what the job is. And sometimes jobs change. And so in truth, a lot of department heads may come to you and say, oh yeah, my job descriptions don't reflect my reality. But it would be unusual to me for that to be sort of an across the board thing, or for that to be a flat sum of money that you hand to your department heads and tell them to change their job descriptions and change the grade. So I think we're kind of talking about two different things
We
that we
are.
sort of mushed together. So I think these job descriptions, in my opinion, should come to the board and you should make a decision on those. And then they should be graded into our system.
But my challenge is we have one department that's doing it. If we don't have a standardized process and procedure, then other departments can come forward and use a different methodology for reasoning behind changing a job description. Somebody hypothetically might come and just say, well, I want to pay Billy more, and Billy, let's just say he was reclassified doing, he does XYZ more. So that changes his job description and changes his pay class just to get a higher pay grade.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be that, it really shouldn't be, I want to get Billy more money. It should be, this job is not accurately reflected. I read the description and it says administrative assistant answers the phone, types, blah, 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 and this person's doing all these other higher level functions or different functions or whatever. I mean, there is a process, if I'm not mistaken, and I get my handbooks messed up from government to government, but I'm pretty sure our employee handbook has a pretty defined process for if you want to reclassify a position, here's what you need to show. Am I right? I mean, I think it
that's
gives
why
some
we're here.
standards. And so I think we have maybe a better process than you believe. And so we should show you that and decide what that looks like and see if it's enough. I'm really not, I'm not sure that you do want to be consistent, but I don't know that you want to necessarily invite every department head. I guess you could, but to change every job in their department. It's the kind of thing that should be begging for a change because it's so out of date and not something that you decide to, I think that could be a dangerous slippery slope. And then the other piece of it is we've done a salary study based upon this classification plan. I don't know if we use a third-party administrator every time to grade positions. Do we do that?
We have.
No.
We did
We
the
used
last
it, well, we
time.
used third party. to do the
Yeah,
salary.
so ideally, I mean, you would take the new job description and you would send it. I mean, typically that would happen. A new job description would get sent to your, your third-party administrator so that that's graded and put within the program and in the plan and not just randomly, established to ensure that equity that you're talking about. So anyhow, those are just a few things to think on. So I think everybody's on the right track. And I think the notion of an allocation for merit has a lot of merit. But I think this process of changing job descriptions and job titles and job grade and range is something that is proper for this board.
David, have you had any other job or department heads come and ask about doing the same process?
Are we talking about positions or
I mean, we-
people or both?
Positions, and it shouldn't be
talking-
about people. And
Okay,
Sharon
but
said
then-
that properly. It shouldn't be about people.
Okay.
It should be
but
about
then
the
when I
position.
hear Benny, then it's like, well, now you got this good employee, so we're gonna.
Well, that's
work-
the merit
So
part.
then you
Separate.
get,
That's a
Yeah,
That's the
that's
merit.
separate.
Yeah, and that's where we're kind of meshing them.
okay,
but-
I'm.
That's the reason I
sorry.
said that this is way out there and giving you a lot of food for thought going forward
Yeah,
in reference to the merit portion of it to maintain a good employee.
yes,
As,
okay.
as council is saying, this is the grade change based on
DCA sets the grade.
the job
Position.
that the
So
person
she's talking about positions.
position. She's graded a
Positions,
position
Job
and
description.
went through our handbook and used the formula that we have in our handbook and went to HR, which is what she should do,
Yes,
and got the approval of HR
okay,
for this change based
Yes.
on the information and the rules and regulations that are part of it.
So what I'm hearing, we could
Such and such.
entertain allowing the job changes and then without
job.
grade
description.
changes, without payroll, grade, you call it grade changes, and then allow a third party to come up with that.
Well, I think
But
they're
I thought
hand
she
in
could-
hand, though. I really think you need to do it all together.
They're both-
And so what I understand Sharon to be saying is that for two of these positions, she's looking at it, realizing that the existing job description is not adequate for the function she needs. And I'm talking for you, Sharon, please just jump in. It's not adequate for the function she needs fulfilled. And so even perhaps the minimum qualifications are skewed. I'm sure she's maybe adjusting those a little bit. And so that is going to necessarily require a change in grade. So because just the quick glance I've had at this, it appears that all these positions are really being upgraded in terms of responsibility and knowledge requirements and those kinds of things. So likely the minimum qualifications are changing and that would necessitate a grade change. So, and I don't know how we determine the grade. Okay, through HR. So she may have looked at equivalents. I think it's helpful if you send it back to your salary study people so that it's, there's no question that it's plugged in, but that may be more time than Sharon has on this process if she's trying to hire for important vacancies. But I do think it needs to be thought about. And Sharon, you asked the right question. It's positions,
I
not
think so.
people.
Okay.
I think the problem,
It's-
I think the problem we run into when we talk about sending it back to the salary study people, that was a
Oh,
contracted thing that's come and gone.
Yeah.
We don't have somebody standing by that we can call on the phone and say, I'm gonna email you some stuff.
And some do. Some counties have
We don't have
third-party
that.
administrators,
So
so that's
we-
fair.
What I think is, kind of goes back to what we talked about before, is we have a HR director who's following our own policy,
Mhm,
a policy that we already have
mhm.
that Sharon looked at, followed, went to the HR director, and the HR director says, yes, I agree. And with what you're saying this person does, then the grade would be this, which is the salary for that particular job, and mesh that. She didn't create a brand new grade.
And all that is in the position control that we have.
Yeah,
So
it's
the
already
position
there.
co-
We already
control
have a
shows those
process
salaries and those grades.
for that right there.
And
And so
Danny, is there anybody in your department that this would be applicable to?
We have a similar scenario that's actually
Oh.
Okay.
coming before the board
I knew
next, and it's,
I knew that.
what we're asking to do is.
I don't, I just wanted a yes or
we
no.
are.
Jeff, is there, Jeff, is
And
there
if I-
anybody in your department this would be applicable to?
Not been there long.
No,
enough to figure
he
it out.
hasn't.
Well, we did.
What are we
You
talking
brought-
Matt,
You asked them to bring one to the board. When they did the erosion control person and
Right,
Yeah,
the stormwater.
yeah, we
stormwater.
did that. Well, we did, yeah.
And so we just did it.
Matt, is there anybody in your department this is applicable to?
I think planning and zoning is a little bit more unique because it has changed so much over the years and these positions have been there for a long time and
Yeah.
they've just not morphed with the way that the department has changed and the responsibilities that they have. And I think that's kind of what Sharon is trying to do is just to bring it up to the current, these people, well, I know we're not talking about people, but the people that were in these positions, they were doing these jobs plus anyway,
Yes.
but they were doing it, they were hired for something else. They were just doing above what they were actually hired for when the positions were filled. And I think that's kind of, I'm not wanting to speak for it, but I think that's kind of where you're going with that. That's what these people were actually, that's what to get what planning and zoning needs to get done. That's what these three positions need to do. And that's what they were doing. We're just trying to make it match what was going on in the department.
and I think too, if you go back to the salary study, we talk a lot about the salary study. When we hired a company to do the salary study, they sent out a questionnaire asking
Yes.
everybody what they did.
Yes, they did.
Then they didn't take all that into consideration. They were looking, I don't even know if they looked at the job description, just to be honest with you, of all the people, because I know years ago, when we were doing salary studies and I was a department director, you know, the input that I put into looking at what every single one of my 100 people put down on that piece of paper got totally ignored by the salary study. Salary study come back and says, well, we compared you to counties of like size. 25,000 people down here in South Georgia. That's not a salary study. I mean, because this last time, we were very specific asking them that, you know, we got to be competitive in the job market. We don't care what they do in South Georgia. We've got to have employees in Dawson County, Georgia, not employees down in South Georgia doing the same job who may not be doing the same thing. And the county doesn't even do the same thing that this county does. I mean, we got, half the counties in this state don't even have zoning. So they don't even have a planning department. So they don't have anybody that does any of that stuff.
I would, you know, I'm not a big, I know you have to have this kind of stuff. I'm not a big salary study fan
No.
anyway. I'd rather take what the department head says, goes through HR, it gets approved by Dave, and then it comes to us. To me, that's more pertinent information than we're ever going to get from any salary study, because they're actually the people that's there and observing it and doing it on a day-to-day, everyday basis. So,
Well, is this appropriate to come to us?
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
is
It has
this
to,
following
yes.
policy?
Per the
Yes.
policy.
Yes.
It is following
It's
policy.
following the
Yeah.
policy. That's the reason they're here.
Okay, well, now,
Can I-
Jameson, he asked for this number one change way back during our budget time, didn't he? Because this number one, that's where Diane was, is that correct?
The office.
Positions.
Well, you have to orient me. But that is what she was doing. Okay, because I know he asked for that, okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we got behind the eight ball.
I think we're on the right track. We just got to, like the council says, let's keep those two separate. And still look forward in far as the dollar amount and stuff. And we can look at that twice. We can look at that now. We can look at that in the budget process. But I think the legwork that she has done followed the policy of the county and went to the appropriate person, which is our HR director, who basically agreed. She didn't have to twist her arm or anything like that to make it happen. So, and I think when she was here last time, when she first presented it and nodded that she did agree. And so, I mean, I think personally, we can take this up if that's the desire of the board and make it happen, or, you know.
And then
So-
my question is, then what? Is that when you start with all the other?
Then they continue to work.
No,
I don't think
That's
you
all
need
they
to
do.
invite that. I mean, I think you need to be consistent in terms of how you allocate funds for merit increases when you do that as part of the budget. But I don't think you need to invite necessarily, because in just this quick poll, you've had a couple department heads
Mhm.
say, we don't have issues. People are properly classified. It's really based on how they're classified.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to pull up
And
your
you're gonna
employee
always-
handbook, but I'm having trouble with that. But this is policy. I was thinking I might give you some comfort if you heard particularly what the process is, but I can share that with you tomorrow or whenever you wish. But I'm not able to find it. It's not loading as quickly as I'd like. But at any rate, we have sections in the plan. Well, here it is. There's a section 8 called classification plan. And it discusses job description, minimum qualification, procedures for adopting new job classifications, procedures for modifying existing job classifications, and procedures for reclassification of positions. So it is all really spelled out.
So I would say that probably what the board needs to do in reference to that is look at that. Get a copy of it, look at it and see if there's any changes that we're required to do anyway, that we would have to vote on that you want to make to that. Or you think the current process, because if that process is good enough, you think it's good enough, then this is the process you're gonna see. Is she's going, like she did, she made the effort, followed the policy, and I think going forward, you'll have others, you may have others who think that, who go through that same process, because they may get up to Christie and she says, no, that's not, that doesn't meet the policy.
So everybody else will have the same opportunity.
They would.
Yeah.
And they do under
They
the
do now.
policy,
They do under
under the
policy now,
employee
yeah.
handbook.
And she
So
just
it's
followed the
just
policy. So
An
yeah.
initiative.
And
yeah.
what document is that?
It's the employee handbook.
County
The
handbook,
handbook.
Mhm.
county handbook.
I think I've got one, but it's probably old. I
no,
don't
we just
remember that
approved.
in there.
I can send this to you guys.
Okay,
I've got
That'll
one on
work.
my bed, matter of fact.
all right.
I guess for me, I've been researching this and looking at this as really opening up Pandora's box on the pay side of it, not as much as the job change, position changes.
Okay.
And so that's where I focus my research on, is a function to get people paid at a higher level.
You think that's what they would do, to you change the position?
Well, it's a function of
Put
getting
them in.
somebody to a higher pay scale is
Yeah.
to change.
Which we just did.
the-
When we tried, we couldn't hire anybody in public works, and so we changed.
Well, I think technically the idea behind that was a conservative idea, and the fact that you take two positions and you migrate them into one, so you didn't have to hire two people, you could hire one. But to your point, yes, we did change it to, I don't think it was a goal to just singly
No,
pay people higher. But you're right. I mean, it ultimately allowed us to get into a more competitive position to hire one person instead of two.
And let me just clarify something, because I just had to talk through it to hear about your third-party administrator and how that worked. But the policies do provide for, depending on whether it's a new job or modification of existing job, that it does go to the county manager for an analysis for purposes of creating the job classification, placing the job classification into the appropriate grade within the classification plan, and determining whether the creation of a new job classification is warranted. And then it goes on from there in terms of consideration in conjunction with the annual budget process is helpful if possible. And then recommendations of the county manager shall be presented to the Board of Commissioners. That's how that works for each of those types of changes. So it looks like it's gone completely according to policy. And they have, so I want to take back my comments on possibly sending it out to someone. Our policies say that we will review it and place it within the appropriate grade ourselves. So it appears that that's what was done. So I think it's right for you to act on tonight if you wish.
Question for Sharon, if the ones that we do have people in, which is Is that number 2 and 3? Which one do we have somebody in right now?
Development
Three.
specialist 2.
Don't we have somebody in number 3?
Number 2,
I'm not sure.
business license technician.
I thought that was more. No.
I'm sorry, that one chart that has caused the most confusion was really just for HR. Our
So which-
position is, where there's a person in the position is number 1 on the blue and white chart.
What about the agenda?
You have the agenda?
That's what I think they're referring
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
You have the agenda?
oh, yes. The Development Services Office Manager is a vacant position. And
I don't see development.
Well, that's number 1 on our.
that's number 1.
That's what
sorry.
she's wanting to
Okay,
change
so
from
page
administrative
56.
assistant.
Yeah.
Page 56 is vacant. That's the Development Services Representative. And then page, I don't have a number, but I know what page it is.
Business license technician is.
Come here and look at this for a minute.
Vacant.
Come here. Come up here and look at this.
Oh, Marty.
Yeah, all I
I
have. is
thought I did
vacant.
too. I thought Markley.
Here. This is the way they're listed on the agenda. So take a look at those and tell us which ones are vacant.
Number 1 is vacant and number 2 is vacant.
So the position, the person, the individual, the body that's in number 3. Are we, is that person, are we changing anything? Are they made aware of any additional responsibilities that may have? If they got hired on knowing, all right, this is my job description, and now we're changing their job description. That person has bought into the idea of changing their job description to XYZ, either adding additional responsibilities or taking them away.
We've actually cleaned them up. That person was assigned a lot of duties that belong to the planner.
Okay,
So we pulled those back and returned them to the planner.
right.
And this
So do we
is
need to
going,
change the planner position?
not during this process. Not tonight.
That's what I'm talking about. We're opening it up.
Well,
That's-
but that's my job. That's what I need to, I need to fix that and bring it up to 2022. But by combining the occupational license specialist and the zoning specialist into a development services 2, it not only provides a stepping stone for 1, if you come in as a permit specialist and you get some certifications. And if somebody was to leave or be promoted, there's a career path. But these 2 positions are going to tag team. The occupational specialist, once they learn everything there is to learn about Georgia code and occupational licenses, will provide backup for the zoning person and vice versa, because you cannot tell the general public that so-and-so is not here today, I can't process a business license. And we just can't do that. But I can't attract anybody that's willing to learn this much with at least a 2-year degree that can juggle that much data and information and knowledge. You gotta,
So back to my original question, is the person, the individual that's in 3, are we assigning them more duties, task duties, responsibilities? Was that TDR, I think, back in the college days? Are we assigning them more things to do? I know you're taking some away, but are we assigning them new tasks and stuff? And they've agreed, okay, you're changing my job, but I was hired on doing this, but I'm comfortable doing this.
well, I think with the higher pay grade, there would be an expectation that you will work with the occupational license
But does
specialist.
the person that's in that,
Yeah.
do they know that that's what they're
They
gonna be
know of the
doing?
process and they've seen the job description, yes.
So they know that.
So basically, I would say that person's probably already doing more than what their current job description
Correct.
said.
Correct.
That's the reason you're upgrading.
But if you, hypothetically, you had somebody that was,
Wanting to do less, I hope not.
no, but,
Not for long.
no, but if we added a new thing that they had to do and, say they had to have whatever this thing, specialist person is, they had to
Yeah.
have some certification and they're like, well, I don't want to go get that certification. But
Right.
so if they don't go get it, then are we terminating them? Are we demoting them or?
No, I mean, that's again, a problem for the manager to deal with,
Right.
not a problem, but perhaps they have a different career path or which, other duties as assigned. We certainly work within the job description, but also have to recognize that people have skills and abilities. And if it's something that they're just not confident in, or, that gets into nitty gritty of what you do when you come to work every day. I mean,
Well, there's always an expectation that, in my opinion, I mean, having seen responsibilities that I had when I was a county employee grow over time, that I'm not going to be doing the same thing today, 10 years from now.
Sure.
So there's got to be some expectation from that employer. I would hope that that employee understands that, guess what? Your job today is not what it's going to be maybe even 3 years from now or 4 years from now. And that's what leads to something like this right here, where you see a change in the job classification and grade. It's because you're not doing the same thing that some of these were probably written. I don't know how long ago some of these were probably written, but they've probably been written long time ago.
I just don't want to blindside an employee.
Oh,
which
sure.
I mean,
Well-
these employees have been a part of this process is what you're saying.
And I think that's an important point. And to Commissioner Gaines' point, what I would suggest is that you present the new job description once it's approved by the Board of Commissioners to that employee, ask them to sign off on accepting that new job. And then I think that clears it up. But every job description will have a caveat that says and
All
other,
duties and
as
or
assigned. So I feel like we're probably covered, but I would have them sign on
Yeah,
it because, in the event there's any future disciplinary action and you need to pull the job description, or you need to pull the job description to send to a doctor for a health certification, we need the employee to understand what the
Yeah.
job is. So I would have them sign off on it. And we can work through
Agreed.
that logistical process if needed.
All right, so what do we want to do? We talked this into death.
I think we talk a little bit more.
You made a hypothetical motion. Are you making that a real motion, or are you just going
No, I
to
mean-
leave that hypothetical?
No, I'll withdraw my hypothetical.
Okay, all right.
Well, I think that,
Do I have a real motion?
that Sharon's went through the, procedures that we have in place, and I'd make the motion that we approve all three of these grade changes.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second from
Title and grade. change.
Title and grade
grade.
changes.
Commissioner Dooley and seconded by Commissioner Satterfield to approve all three of these title and grade changes. Do I have any other discussion? As if we've not had any.
I assume that we're just gonna add the other piece of this as far as the merit stuff onto our next work session and discuss it there.
I mean,
We
I
can.
can include that in the motion if we need to, but I mean,
No.
I'm,
I think it is.
No need.
we'll just add it to.
We
agenda
can just add
item.
it to an agenda item, talk about more.
But yeah, I'm definitely good with that too, but
No further discussion, please vote. That's approved for. Thank you. All right, move on, new business. First up, we have consideration request to approve and fund indigent defense invoicing module, which was presented a couple of weeks ago, and that's about $8,000. And that will help them to track all their lawyer hours and stuff, especially in reference to juvenile court, which they have to have. And this will make that happen. So any other information needed?
This was a one-time expense.
Yes. Motions.
Motion approved.
Motion by Commissioner Satterfield,
Second.
second by Commissioner Gaines. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. That's approved 4-0. Next up, we have consideration request to approve additional funding for training for the treatment services employees. That was presented to you. Normally, that's way away from here, and this time it's in Tennessee, I believe it is.
Nashville. Yeah.
$1,790 additional dollars for them to be able to send their people to training. Any other information needed? Motions.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Fawcett,
Second.
second by Commissioner Satterfield. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And that's approved 4-0. Next up, we have consideration of radio system upgrade project for Dawson County. That was presented a couple of weeks ago. This is the E911 system radio. We have basically $3 million, I guess, proposed in Splosh 7 for that. Looks like the general estimates for the 800 megahertz system, 800 megahertz system was somewhere between 10 and $13 million. And that was the recommendation from the consultant that we hired in reference to versus the current system that we have. And that would give us more ability for our individuals to talk back and forth to each other. I guess we'll need to, we got to pick the system we want to use, which would be the 700, 800 megahertz or the other one, which was currently like we have now. And we also have to talk about the revenue. Or set a budget, I guess is what we need to kind of do, set a temporary budget, because we don't have actual dollar amount yet of what it's going to cost because it hasn't been bid out. So we probably need to set some kind of a budget, and I guess we'll talk about, I guess when we get a real number,
I guess it matters because we can set a budget and we get the budget or get the
get the, where are we going to,
quote back.
yeah.
We'll need the budget in order to bid it out.
To bid it out, we'll need some form of a budget. We can make a change to that though.
Yes, sir.
Council, what's your thought?
Well, if it's for purposes of approval and then for a bid, as Dave mentions, we are going to want to have some cost parameters. If you have a sense of a not to exceed amount, that could be appropriate. Do you know enough to know that?
When they're bidding on it, because that's what they'll go through.
That's right.
Well, that's a good point.
We don't tell them what that is, but
Yeah, but we're in a public
This
meeting.
part-
They're watching this.
We're both thinking-
They
I
might
know,
know.
they could be watching it.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, are we not approving, I guess we've got to have the budget to go to,
You gotta
to get a.
gotta have,
to get a-
gotta have
Well,
policy in place.
so at this point, you're approving funding to proceed with it, but we don't know what that,
Total amount
We
would
just gotta
be.
get a bid on it.
well, then, I mean, could it be as simple as just approving for
That's the
staff to present an RFP and proceed with that without any budgetary funding at all right now? I mean, if a proposal comes to you, then you'll decide at that time, and if they're all $50 million, then you may decide,
Deny.
we're not gonna approve any of these.
We've
So,
already got the parameters of what we're looking for in the system, so we could, I mean, that'll be included in the in the request for bid, so.
yeah, I
you know,
think you could simply take a motion to proceed with
Securing a bid.
securing a bid,
On the
going through the
700,
RFP or
800
RFP process.
And does that satisfy purchasing policy?
Yes.
Do we have a purchasing expert here?
Before issuing a PO, you obviously have your budget. set
Right.
by then.
Yeah, we'd have to set by then.
But I just don't want to show our cards without.
No, I
So-
think that's a great idea. So if we're in that early of a stage and just trying to get an RFP or RFB, then I think we just move it forward on that basis.
We just
and-
need to know which system.
Well, that,
Yeah.
this is what the recommended motion was. Staff recommends that BOC choose the option for the radio system. The budget of $3 million from SPOS 7 collections. And determine the funding source for the remaining funds.
We can do that.
And then to allow purchasing to release an RFP to install.
So we got. $3
That's
million.
what the motion,
Okay.
that's what they requested.
We really don't have to establish the additional funding source right now, other than we got 3 million in there now to move forward with.
Okay.
So I make a motion that we allow staff to proceed with securing a bid for the 700, 800 megahertz radio system.
Motion by Commissioner Gaines,
Second,
second by Commissioner Dooley. Discussion.
Not to prolong it, but this is it's a vote, but it's a big deal, as Tim
Yeah.
and Billy had pointed out. I mean, we're at a stage that's been multiple years in the works.
yeah, and everything that's been presented, the 700, 800 megahertz band is where we need to be. There's other challenges with the other ones, and, you know, it's time to move forward with it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote. That's approved 4-0. Next up, we have consideration request to release a design build RFP for an emergency 911 emergency operations center building, budgeted $5.5 million in Splash 7 for that. We did see some preliminary drawings that I guess some of the staff have put together. We had some comments in reference to, there was a lot of duplication in that, and
Yes.
David's going to look at that as we move forward with this design build concept where we get what we need, but not over what we need.
Mhm.
And so any other information needed on that? Motions.
I'll make a motion to release a design build for the emergency 911 center. I guess the EOC,
Slash
Operations Center.
EOC, yep.
And we need to add what you said about the county manager coming back to us.
We do want to, obviously, we'll see the
Fine-tune
design.
Design.
Yeah, design.
We want to see the,
Wants to
Yeah.
see design, okay.
yep, get that, he'll get that to us. All right, so we have a motion.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Satterfield, seconded by Commissioner Dooley. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And that is approved 4-0. Next up, we have consideration of request for funding to purchase the ESO fire reporting software. That was $22,202.68 for the remainder of this year. And annually, that will be $37,434.05. We'll put that in next year's budget. Any other information needed?
I just wanted to ask, will there be a contract where it won't increase every year, or will this amount increase every year? The 37,000, I know 22 is just finished this year.
So, yes, so I've worked with Melissa Hawk. She'll have a contract that is in line with the current county contracts, how it expires. And it's renewable every year. So if there's an increase, then the vendor has to allow us notification that there'll be an increase in service or an increase in price, I should say,
Probably will be.
Yeah.
as outlined in the contract.
Which what we
I
normally
will
do.
say that with the previous Firehouse Web, we didn't see increases
You
for
did?
3 or 4 years. It was a
Oh,
pretty set price, moving on.
okay.
Normally, we usually do whatever the current price is, and then 1-year renewables is what we normally do.
Correct.
And then there's an option, obviously we can, if they raise the price, then we can look at that. All right, so basically you'd be approving $22,202.68
Fund balance.
out of fund balance.
Mhm. I
That's
make
what
the
you-
motion, we approve that out of order.
Keep going.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, I just make a motion that we approve this funding and then
Use
for
fund
the
balance.
year, yes, and use the fund balance.
Okay.
I think this is gonna be a great thing for y'all.
Well, it pretty much ain't got no choice, otherwise they're gonna be dead.
That's right, that's right.
All right,
but
so we
it's-
got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Fawcett, seconded by Commissioner Dooley. Discussion.
And it helps on the ISO too,
It
this
does.
year.
Oh, I love that. Well, you speaking my language.
Hearing no further discussion, please vote. That's approved 4-0. Move on to number 6. Artificial turf fields for Park and Rec. That's the football field at Veterans. That is the all-purpose field at Veterans. And that is the one field at Rock Creek in reference to
ADA.
the ADA. And this would need to be in your motion, would need this to be a design bill not to exceed $2.5 million from impact fees.
Impact fees.
Any further discussion or any other information needed? Motion.
I'll make a motion to approve design build of the 88 field at Rock Creek and the 2 turf fields at Veterans, design build with funds coming from impact fees.
Maximum.
Not to
Not to
exceed
exceed.
$2.5 million.
Motion from Commissioner Satterfield,
Second,
second from Commissioner Fawcett. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And that's approved 4-0. Next up, we have request to increase pay per call for volunteer firefighters, currently paying $12.85 up to 16. And the volunteers that would be making that now would be just a straight $3. Correct?
$3 increase.
$3
If they're officers.
if they were already there.
Mhm,
Yeah, okay.
mhm.
Any other information needed?
Question from the chief.
Go ahead.
Are we still paying their training and stuff?
Yes, so they still
Yeah.
meet on Thursdays. They're still
But if it's for like a certification, do we, I mean, do they go to the academy? We don't have to pay for that, though, do we? Just,
state funded
okay,
outside.
give them a vehicle or something? Okay, all right.
That's just out of our local travel budget.
How often do they go to training?
To the State Fire Academy,
Just in general through the year?
they're required to
Gotta have one.
meet every Thursday. That's required by the state fireman's pension fund for them to be eligible. They have to meet X amount of hours, a minimum of 20 hours.
Hit the button.
20 hours a month. Been up here.
20 hours a month. in training?
Correct.
And that's once a
Oh.
week.
And that doesn't bring them into compliance with ISO. That only brings them into compliance with one of the many compliance agencies that we have to deal with. So that's the pension fund compliance. ISO, they have to meet 196. And then if they drive fire trucks, they have to have another 20 hours of driver's training. If they're an officer, they have to have another 20 hours of officer training on top of another 12 hours of hazardous materials training. If they
And that-
maintain a medical certification, you got 40 hours for EMT training and 80 hours if they're a paramedic.
Sounds like our full-time trainees.
I know.
A lot of,
It's a lot.
they have to do the same thing as a paid person does.
Everything.
Dedicated to do.
They are. They are dedicated. Any other information needed? Motions?
I'll make a motion to approve the pay increase, and do I need to include in there about having it retroactive to July
Yes.
1st?
Yes.
And have it retroactive to July 1st,
2022.
2022, yeah.
Motion by Commissioner Dooley,
Yeah, 1901.
1901.
Yeah.
Make sure there's no ambiguity in that one.
Yeah.
You know, them attorneys get, they need us
I know.
alive.
1901. I don't think they'd even be here.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Gaines, discussion. Hearing none, please vote. That's approved 4-0. Next up, we have review and update to the zoning ordinances, an update to impact fees, and we have a resolution that I'm going to read for your consideration. There's a resolution, the Dawson County Board of Commissioners enacting an emergency moratorium on acceptance of applications for rezoning to the residential land use districts identified in Article 3 and the mixed-use village use district of the Dawson County Land Use Resolution. Whereas the Dawson County Land Use Resolution regulates the use of property located in Dawson County, Georgia, and whereas the Dawson County Board of Commissioners is the governing body of the county and therefore is responsible for providing appropriate public infrastructure and services to best serve the public interest, including but not limited to such infrastructure and services associated with current and future development within the county. And whereas the board has become concerned that the pace of development within the county may outpace the ability of the county to provide sufficient infrastructure and services under the current financial circumstances. And whereas the board believes that physical responsibility is necessary with respect to the provision of public infrastructure and services. And whereas the board is concerned that current and future residential development within the county has begun and will continue to create a physical imbalance if allowed to proceed under the current financial framework. And whereas the board desires to update its impact fee program to reflect the current physical realities associated with providing adequate services for residential use in the county. And whereas the board desires to consider amendments to the land use resolution to potentially assist in creating an appropriate balance between residential development and the infrastructure necessary to service the development. Whereas the board desires to delay further residential development in the county until the board has considered possible changes to the impact fee program and or amendment of the land use resolution. And whereas the Georgia Supreme Court has held that a moratorium with respect to application of a zoning ordinance may be put in place for a reasonable period of time without the necessity of complying with the notice requirements of the Georgia zoning procedures law. And whereas the board finds a moratorium barring until August 5th, 2022, the acceptance of applications for rezoning to the residential land use districts identified in Article 3 and mixed-use village use district of the land use resolution to be reasonably necessary, the least restrictive means available, a reasonable exercise of the county's police power in the best interest of the public safety and welfare. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of Dawson County, Georgia as follows. Number one, the Dawson County Board of Commissioners does hereby enact a moratorium barring until August 5th, 2022, the acceptance of applications for rezoning to the residential land use districts identified in Article 3 and the mixed-use village use district of the land use resolution. Number two, the moratorium imposed by this resolution shall terminate on the earliest date. Number one, August 5th, 2022. Number two, approved by the Dawson County Board of Commissioners of additional moratorium after a public hearing. Or number three, board action terminating the moratorium. Number three, this resolution shall be effective upon a majority vote by the Board of Commissioners. So resolved this 7th day of July, 2022, the public health, safety, and welfare demanding it. What is the pleasure of the board?
Chairman, if I could just make one clarification that I think one of our astute attentive reporters picked up on from the work session. The August 5th is when the 30 days for the moratorium, but August 4th is actually the date of our meeting.
Right.
So if, I just want to make sure nobody was confused about that. I was asked a question at the break. So August 4th is when we plan to have a public hearing for consideration of extension. And pursuant to paragraph 2, if we adopt a new moratorium, then that would end this current one a day early.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any other information needed? Motions?
Make a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
Motion by Commissioner Gaines,
Second.
second by Commissioner Fawcett. Discussion
Doesn't affect anything that's
in the hopper.
in the hopper
New,
or,
new application.
yeah, or nothing that's been tabled or whatever.
Nope.
Is it automatic that we're having a public hearing, or do we need to go ahead and vote for that?
A
Is it-
date.
Well, you could make a separate motion and call for the public hearing. Otherwise, you know, I think we'll work together just to proceed with that.
Is it just not part of it?
Yeah.
It's not part of the resolution,
If staff
so,
comes back and says they can do it
but I-
within 30 days.
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
But you could make that as a joint motion if you wish to move to approve the moratorium resolution as well as call for a public hearing for August 4th. That would be fine as a joint motion.
what are, refresh my memory on, how long does it take us to call for a public hearing? If we don't do it at this meeting, will we have time to do it at the next, or?
I think it would be really tight because
15
we need
days.
at least
Go ahead.
15
Okay.
days.
I'll propose an amendment to Chris's motion to call for a public hearing on August 4th for the moratorium, possible extension.
Do we have a second to that amendment?
Second.
Go ahead.
Motion by Mr. Dooley. You can. You can second the amendment.
That doesn't matter. Tim can do it.
No, I thought it was your motion. I didn't know if you could second.
Yeah, it is. Go ahead, Tim.
He can
Second.
Second by Commissioner Satterfield. I will take up the amendment first. Take up the amendment first. The amendment is to add a public hearing to be held on the 4th
Yep.
of August. Okay. Any other information needed? We're voting on the amendment. So here none, please vote. And the amendment passes 4-0. So we'll go back to the original motion, which now includes the amendment, where we passed the resolution has presented. That any other information needed? Hearing none, please vote. And that's approved 4-0. All right. And let's see. And that is all that we have. We do have need for a executive session to discuss personnel. So I'll entertain a motion to go in executive session.
So move.
There's no public comment.
Motion by Commissioner Fawcett,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Gaines. Discussion.
I would just note that there was no public comment in the separate section pursuant to the clerk. So
What?
there was
Yeah.
nobody signed up for public comment.
Yeah, okay, yeah. All right, so we're gonna go,
We'll vote.
all in favor of the executive session, please vote. Any vote coming out of it? No vote coming out? All right. All right, so with that being said, we'll take about 10 minutes and we'll move to the back for the executive session. Thank you for your attendance. We are adjourned.